Welcome to Season 6 of Paper Talk,
where we talk about tips and tricks on navigating and building your small creative business.
I'm Quinn Nguyen of Pingot Mosey.
I'm Jessie Chu of Crafted to Bloom.
And I'm Sarah Kim of Handmade by Sarah Kim.
In Season 6, we'll be sharing our experiences and insights on running a small creative business, from managing finances to building your brand.
We'll also be interviewing other small business owners and experts in the field to get their perspectives and advice.
So join us as we dive into the world of small creative businesses and help you take it to the next level.
Hello. Welcome back to another episode of Paper Talk. We have Jessie and Sarah joining us today to talk about, I want to preface, we talked about this particular topic in the previous episode. If you missed it, it's in Mailing. And we talked with Mailing and Sarah about how to fill your seats in your workshops when you're trying to sell workshops. But I really want a deeper dive into this particular topic because, yes, it's easy to create a workshop, but how do you fill all the seats in there? And welcome, Jessie. We've missed you. How have you been doing?
Oh, thank you for bringing me back. I'm glad to be able to connect with you guys again. It's been so nice chatting with you guys before this episode. I'm doing well, making things, spending time with you. Yes. Also doing a lot of workshops because it's spring. Usually it's spring and fall that I do a lot of workshops. In the summer, I tend to take it off, as do many other people. So it's actually a really good time for me to talk about workshops and how to market them.
How about you, Sarah?
I'm doing good. I'm actually finishing all my workshops and then getting ready for the summer to take a break. The workshops are usually pretty popular for me during like Mother's Day and spring with all the flowers. I think from like Valentine's Day to Mother's Day is the hot workshop time kind of thing.
The interesting part for me is because I'm working on the book is I'm trying to save all my workshops so when my book comes out so I can do the workshop/book tour around my area. And also, interestingly enough, when I did the CBS Sunday Morning, a lot of people on the East Coast was very interested in paper flower. So you East Coast people need to be doing more workshop because people over there are reaching out to me to say, hey, can you come to the East Coast to teach? So that is something that I want to talk about a little bit more is how do you decide when you're ready to do a workshop and how do you fill all those particular seats? I haven't been doing workshop in the spring as both of you because I've been working on the book. I'm still working on the book. And the interesting part is now it's over to the graphic design department. They're doing all the different layouts. And I think next week or the week after, I'm supposed to meet with them again. They're going to give me all the words and the pictures all put together. And I'm so excited to look at it like in book format. Like, oh my gosh, this is the picture I took. These are the words I wrote. How do they put it together? And does it make sense? So that's going to be really exciting. But it's been really fun. One thing I did want to talk about, do you have your own studio? Do you partner with other people to host your different workshops? I think with COVID for all three of us, if you had a studio, you had to shut down because it wasn't worth it to have a space. So now that we're coming out of that, I want to talk about who do you decide to partner up with and are they a good match? How do you find out if they're a good match? And how do you pick these different vendors or studio space to host your workshop? So I'll throw the question to Jessie first. I know you've been doing a lot of workshop in the past few weeks. How has that been going for you? And are these the first time that you worked with them? Have you worked with them in the past?
Yeah, the workshops that I usually do, I partner with either the city or the art centers or cultural centers that have existing clientele, we'll say. They have an existing mailing list. For example, with Richmond Hill, it's literally the city of Richmond Hill. If you sign up for your city programs, it would be through the city. With Aurora and Visual Arts in Mississauga, both of them are their nonprofit art centers for that particular city. They already have people who sign up to do watercolor, to do ceramics. And so a lot of the people who already follow them are artsy or crafty. They have an interest already in creating things. And those are the main ones that I've done. And those are the most reliable, I would say. And we book them like months in advance as well, because they actually have a coordinator who does all those things, right? They coordinate when the dates are, the marketing, they contact you to get all their details, and then they set the pricing. And then they pay you a set fee because that's how they work. And technically they're nonprofit. Essentially, yeah, your tax dollars goes into their pockets, but they also need to make money to run their center, pay for the people who work at the center. It's not for-profit venue where I've worked with studio in the past, or even the Paper Place where I teach there quite often as well, where it's for-profit. So their space is either a creative space where they just host workshops, which is like studio, or the Paper Place that is a vendor, right? They sell paper mainly, but they offer workshops to get people in and buy their paper and just get into their shop. So it's a little bit different in terms of how those work, because the clientele of that venue might not be specific to what you're teaching, like paper flowers. I'm lucky that the Paper Place and our collaborations works really well, because people who love paper also like to make paper flowers. Studio Moi was a little bit different because they offer a lot of different workshops, clay, embroidery, like a whole bunch of different things. And it's a little bit harder to nail down what their clientele is other than maybe a price. But because their interest varies so much, I found that one a little bit difficult to market. They did the marketing for me, but the type of clientele was difficult to establish. So the good thing about working with the city and these art centers is that they have an established mailing list. And that makes a huge difference. The Aurora Cultural Center not only has a newsletter mailing list, but they also print brochures that they distribute to the people who live in Aurora. So some people, especially older people, looking at physical pamphlets as opposed to going onto the web, versus the Paper Place. It literally is a mailing list, and you may or may not like receiving things from vendors that just sell products to you. You might not follow, but they also have a really strong following on Instagram and a long following. And they're a really established Toronto brick and mortar paper store. They're very niche. And I think that's really important that they're so niche versus Studio Moi, which was a little bit newer, creative workspace. Didn't have a really strong mailing list, wasn't particularly established either. I found it difficult to get people to come to that workshop. The people who did go to that workshop were my followers, with the exception of one person. So it did matter to some extent that they had a following, but I also have a following. I will talk about a recent thing, like as much as it's really consistent with Aurora and with Richmond Hill, my Aurora one just got canceled. I only had 2 lineups. And I wondered about that. And I think this hypothetical, it was on a long weekend, the first long weekend of the year. And perhaps because I also had another workshop coming up the following week, which is full. So maybe that might be a reason why. It's hard to guess, because Aurora, I've been consistently selling out on that one. So suddenly it's what happened. I think the bottom line is I can't really just rely on my followers. I have to also rely on their distribution list, because there's just not enough people who live in the Toronto area who are going to travel a certain way to see me. And then there's the other one that I had on Mother's Day, which also was someone who followed me, who actually came to one of my private workshops in my studio. And that was only her and her mother. Literally 2 people. And I had trouble selling that workshop as well, because the location was in Paladin, which is in the middle of, I don't want to say nowhere, but it's probably an hour away from a lot of bigger cities. The location, I think, is a big deal on that. In that case, it could be to travel all the way there. A small church in a rural area, it's something to consider with location. And so I should say that all the city ones are in the city, right? They're in the city where people can get to. The Paper Place in downtown Toronto, Studio Moi in downtown. Even my own studio, where people come to visit me in my private, when they approach me for private lessons, is in a big city. So I think the smaller cities are a little bit more of a challenge to get people to go because of the travel. That's just logistics, right? And then perhaps timing as well. But I think ultimately you have to collaborate with someone who has a strong following as well. They have to have a distribution list. You can't just rely on yourself. It's possible, but even I live in a big city. It's hard to coordinate everyone to be available at a certain time or a certain date, even if they want to come, but they can't. They're not available. So there's so many factors for them to decide, okay, I'm going to go. Pricing too, right? Pricing as well. But yeah, so those are the recent challenges I've had, which I've never had before, but you know what? It happens. I feel like a lot of people are also pinching their belts a little bit recently. So that could be it too. But I do believe that if you're starting out, that it is important to partner up with a venue that has a strong following, that is very established, because they need to lean on them for the marketing until you're more established. And even then, I think the collaboration is really important who you choose, because frankly, for me, having established networks with the Paper Place, they've referred me to the Art Gallery of Mississauga as well. So I couldn't have gotten certain opportunities without them. And also exhibiting opportunities, being part of that community, I know what's going on. They know me. I teach there. If there's anything else, other opportunities that pop up, my name's there, right? They know me. Networking is another thing too. If you're thinking about where to host your workshops, it's great to make money with other vendors in terms of splitting your fees or whatnot with creative workshops. But I think at the same time, you have to consider teaching as somewhat of a marketing part of your getting your face known, getting people to know what your art is, and then you got to show up. Essentially, that's what it is. So it's more of a marketing than getting paid. That's ultimately for me, that's what my workshops are about.
I 100% agree with you. When you're first starting out, is creating that name, that space where people can come to you to say, oh, she's a great teacher. But how do you build upon that? How do you get yourself recognized? Is going to all these different teaching units, like the art center that Jesse mentioned. That's a huge one. University, if you live in a university town, they also have a lot of programs where they're teaching other people how to prune trees, how to watercolor. It's a huge market. And it's how do you get yourself in there is attend one of the places. Actually, check out the space. Is it a good space for you? Are the students that are coming to those particular center a good fit for you? Are they attracting the right clientele that you want to expand your business on? Those are things that you need to be looking upon, not just, is it a great place for me to teach? You have to think the long term. Yes, you might have to charge a little bit less at the very beginning and not make as much money, creating that reputation, establishing yourself as a person that people can come to you as someone that really goes beyond just teaching because you share all these different techniques. How are you explaining it to them? Are you making it relatable to a lot of different people? Because when you're teaching something, there's so many different types of learners. There's people that are very visual. There's some people that are very audio. Can you cater to those type of students that needs to be taught certain different ways? And you have to switch hats. You have to be able to say that you're explaining how to fringe. Maybe you need to change your wordings a little bit. Maybe you need to show it along with how you are explaining it to them to make it more understandable. Because the other people are also listening on to how you're explaining things. So that's something that you need to have a good voice. Don't speak so quietly. Do speak up a little bit louder because other students might be having the same problem and they are a little shy about asking for help. So by just speaking a tiny bit louder, they can overhear you and says, oh, that's what she's talking about. And then they move on to the next step. So you don't have to explain every single step. And that's one thing. I have a very soft voice at the very beginning. But now that I've taught a lot more, I'm a little bit more vocalized. I open my space up a little bit more to share that teaching moment with other students. And it's also how you're standing. Because most of the time, make sure you have good walking shoes because you're walking around to each of the students, leaning over, showing things. So by opening your space up a little bit more, people can actually see what you're doing and hear what you're doing. How about you, Sarah? How are you reaching out to students?
I think I've been now established with teaching because I've done it for so many years. I do think the place that I usually do my workshop at is also established enough where people go looking for workshops at their store. And with me as well, my followers are looking for workshops that I'm teaching. But in the beginning, I want to say I started out with actually through the city, like Jesse was mentioning, or I'm not sure if for you it was through the city, but it was nonprofit, a local community class. And it was the city that paid me, not necessarily I had to sell tickets. I didn't have to sell tickets. It was the city that was using me as an instructor and paying me as an instructor. And then maybe they pay for materials, local community, residents are paying for materials. That's how I started my whole workshop thing that I'm offering. And I want to say that was maybe 10 years ago. That's how it all started. And with that, I was able to use it as my gallery of, I do offer workshops. I don't know how it evolved over the time. Really in the beginning, I think I did rely heavily on the place that I do it at and their marketing. And I think I did team up with the right people at that time where they were able to market my class instead of me having to try to market my class because I didn't have a big following at that time. And then since I was able to gather that experience, I was able to now come to a point where, people do now follow me and try to find my classes. And luckily right now, currently where I do it at, it is a place where you find workshops. So you can find my workshop there. And they have a big following. They have newsletters and they have a local community, a strong community locally. I recently did a class at a clothing store. It's a boutique and they offer classes in the back of their boutique. It's really cute. And I did it because it's far away from my other location. So I do my regular classes out in Orange County. And then the clothing store that I recently did it at is out in Redlands, which is maybe an hour and a half away from Orange County. So I feel it's the opposite direction. So I thought I could actually hit the local community in that area. It's actually closer to where I live. So I live in the middle of Orange County to Redlands. But it's funny because the classes that I do out in Orange County, there are people that are coming from Redlands and going to the workshop out in Orange County because they want to go out into the city. So Orange County is more of a city area that you want to go visit. And Redlands is more, I don't know, like inland. And I feel like my classes are definitely harder to sell out in that smaller city. And people are coming from that city. So I was like, okay, I could do a class there and I could sell because I see so many people like traveling so far. But I definitely agree with Jessie with trying to be at a location that is more just happening. I don't know. And all that to say, I used to do a lot of my classes out in LA before the pandemic. Definitely the pandemic kind of changed up the whole workshop situation. Just ever since, it hasn't been the same. But when I used to do my classes out in LA, it hasn't been the same. It's unfortunate. I feel like I don't do as many classes as I used to. I do think it's a little bit harder to sell. I used to do classes almost every week before the pandemic, and I was able to sell out every weekend. But then just since the pandemic, I don't know, maybe I don't offer them enough, or maybe I offer, I don't know, maybe the prices are different. The classes out in LA, it's funny because the parking is terrible and the location is not like ideal because it's so busy, but that's where it used to sell out. And it used to be like the place that everybody would want to be at. And also like, I do think those are things that you want to think about, like parking, bathrooms, AC.
Yes.
Because I used to do it at a location that didn't have air conditioner and it would get pretty hot in there. Yeah. So yeah, but I think I did get a little lucky in the beginning to meet the right people that got me started with the whole workshop. But I think that is a good idea. People should go look for maybe local, like city activity, like places. I think they're always looking for classes like this.
And if you're renting out a space, check out the hourly rate. Can you fit your workshop in a timely manner so you're not over exceeding? Because there's some places that will charge $100 per hour. Some will charge up to $200 an hour. Are you charging enough to cover that plus your supplies and teaching time? Another thing you want to think about is, like Sarah said, is there good parking? Is there a bathroom? Things you don't really think about. And then do you provide snacks? Is your class long enough that if it's 3 hour plus, you should provide some sort of sugar rush, like a little bit of candy or something for people to continue on working as you are teaching. Those are important things to think about. Let's talk about how do you go about marketing these? We talked about places, and I also want to talk about pricing. How do you gauge the price? You have to cover your supplies. You have to cover a little bit of your teaching costs. At the very beginning, just like you're pricing your flowers, you need to price it slightly lower so it's more approachable for people. And then as you do establish your reputation and also the venue that has it, you can increase your price a lot more. So how do we go about marketing this? I'll start first. Definitely, if you have not started your newsletter email list, make sure you have it. Whenever you teach, whenever you go out, make sure you have a list where people can put their email down to get on your newsletter. That's how you get started. In person, your Instagram, if you have a little bit of, here's a great way to take care of your paper flowers. Sign up for my email. Here it is. Then just send them a quick little email on that. And I think there's a lot of email platforms nowadays that will let you attach a PDF or some sort of something that they give the email, they get something back. Besides newsletters, where else do you guys promote your workshop?
I want to say the newsletters is like a huge thing now for me. And I remember I was on this podcast talking about how I've never done newsletters and then I just started it. I was shocked. And I finally gathered like a number that I had as a goal to have as subscribers. So I'm like really excited about that. But it's interesting because actually for the whole newsletter thing, like for me, I have customers all around the country and all around the world. So I feel like it's not specific to like the local community. And I think a lot of times these workshops, you have to market to the people around where you're doing your classes at. So if someone is subscribing to my newsletter, like in Canada, they're not going to come to my workshop out in Orange County in California, you know?
Can I give you a tip?
Yes.
Okay, here's the tip for you guys. As you're doing, my tip is I've also gone to that part where, I really need to start, because after the pandemic, I was like, how do I advertise to my local client? So I changed my email sign up to include zip code. And so when they put their email, I ask for their first name, their zip code, and their email, but that will give me like where they're located. So you can run through Google, give me the zip code for the state of Washington or in King County, which is where I am in Seattle. And that will give me the list. And don't be afraid not to spam your whole group because people will travel to your workshop.
Yeah.
But if you have more specialized, like this is a little bit more detailed on your workshop, just put that zip code in. And sometimes it's easy for people to just put like a random number in. They don't want to be spammed. That's totally fine. But the people that are interested, they'll put that zip code in to be more informed on your local newsletter activity.
Yeah, no, that's why I thought it was a good idea to make sure you are like teaming up with a local, like someone that is a local store or like how I did it for the city. I feel like you have to somewhat start somewhere there, like with someone that is locally active. Because I feel like for, at least for me, like my Instagram, my newsletter, it really is just worldwide. So I don't really necessarily have specific my city or where I'm doing my workshop at. So it's a little bit harder to make sure that they're the ones who are getting reached. But yeah, I feel like the newsletter though, in general, I totally recommend because I can't believe I lived this long without doing newsletters because it's the rate.
I'm glad Jesse and I influenced you.
Yeah, you guys did. It's because of the analytics. Like technically, like I have however many followers on my Instagram, but how many clicks do I get? Like the conversion rate, it's not that much. Whereas my newsletters, like I have way less followers on my newsletter, like subscribers, but then the conversion rate of them clicking on my link and then making it into a sale, the conversion rate is much bigger, whatever that is. Yeah.
Higher,
so if you do the actual math, you're having less people, but those people are more likely to click and buy. So
yeah, so true.
Yes, it's so much more targeted. Yes, for sure. And I think, yes, we might feel bad about quote unquote spamming everyone, even though they don't live in our area. But one of those emails is going to one day say, I'm going to do one in wherever.
Yeah. And also don't always be selling something in your newsletter. Give some personal stories or something that's happening in your life that you want to share, like a big win. Or maybe it wasn't a win, but a realization that something happened and you do want to share it with the audience. And that will keep them engaged and keep opening your emails because you want it to be a more of a relationship newsletter versus if you open this, I'm going to sell you something. And it's a big turnoff because sometimes I've gotten in the habit. I subscribe to Banana Republic. I know they're always constantly selling me something. So sometimes I'm not in the mood. I'll delete it without reading it. Yeah. But if it's a personal story, and you want to be able to share something like that. And it's so wonderful. And always invite your newsletter audience to email you back. Because the reason why you want to do that is because it will take you off of the spam list. If they respond back to that email, it goes back to your inbox and the analytics will say, oh, it's not a spam. They're responding back. So there is an actual person on this newsletter.
And I also think like a good way to make sure you're promoting your workshop, whether it is through your social media, just Instagram or wherever, I feel like you do have to do a mock like workshop of some sort to get you started and then have that as like a video or an image in order for you to advertise it. Because I feel like if you're starting really from scratch, it is hard to say, oh, I'm going to teach you this. But as the audience, it's like, what are you going to teach me? And what is it going to look like? I feel like a lot of my selling point, it is like the setup. It looks like a vibe that you want to be a part of and go with your girlfriends. And another thing is, I do think I try to compare myself to like local cooking classes. I used to look up prices for Sur La Table or Williams Sonoma and see what their cooking classes go for and start from there. Because I feel like technically these people, like, they don't really even get to take any type of supply. They just eat the food that they eat, that they make at the end. But they actually run pretty expensive. It's more than $50 per person. And it's like a fun activity. So I would say at least start from there with your prices.
That's a really good comparison. I like that a lot.
I always update my website because People want to go somewhere. You advertise on a social media and they're like, where do I go to get more information? Is this legit? A lot of it is, well, where do I go? And so one of the interesting things is the Mother's Day workshop that I was selling. It was actually it still is on. It's part of it is a month-long exhibit/event. And it is in Caledon. It's called Festivals of Artful Community. And it's linked to an artist who also curate an exhibit of photography. Anyways, it's in Caledon. No, I don't want to say nowhere, but it's not in a city. The challenging thing about that one was that there was no website. There's no website where everyone can go to, whether it's an event, whether it's the studio, whether it's the exhibit, where literally on any ad, you go to a QR code and see that event with a website or a landing page. And I know in the past, people didn't have that. People didn't have the website. All they did was they would issue out ads, send it to local communities or wherever, and they would distribute it. Whether it's they hung it on the community center, or they distribute at churches, or they distributed printed flyers out or whatnot, put it in people's mailbox. But nowadays, the flyer's not enough, right? It's literally, okay, I see the flyer, but is this legit?
Exactly.
Real? What am I signing up for? Who are these people? Is this a real organization or is this a real event? Do I want to commit time on my Mother's Day or on a long weekend to this event? What if I show up and it doesn't exist, right? People really want to see that there's a website that they can go to that tells you about the event, that tells you about where to park, about what the pricing is, what other events are involved, who's involved. It's important. And if you don't have a website or your website's not updated, or you're advertising it on social media in your stories, where does it go? Does it go to your LinkedIn bio? Does that LinkedIn bio go somewhere? Is it just to a Facebook page? Because to be honest, if it goes to a Facebook page, I'm not sure that it's going to go anywhere because you can create events, right?
Yeah,
on Facebook. And then it goes to another link. But you're like, it's great for connecting people, but there's something about it that doesn't say professional to me.
There's a lot of spam account out there.
There is. And so you need a URL designated to your art or to your business.
Yeah.
And if, let's say, someone else is selling it, let's say it's another venue, you need to point people to that direction where it's a website that they can look through. And because they don't just look at where to buy the ticket. I usually will click off and be like, what is this venue? What do they sell? Where are they? You want to see that they're even Eventbrite, I think is better than Facebook.
Yeah.
At least Eventbrite is a legitimate ticket selling, ticket offering website. You know that if you buy something from there, okay, that event is real. They're not just going to take my money. So I think it's important to be present on the web, to be found, because people don't look up people on flyers anymore or on telephone books. They literally want to know, okay, what's going on? I got this flyer. There's a lot of going on. I'm interested. Where do I go? How do I find out more? And is it legit? So updating your website just to show that you have this workshop and it goes to, let's say, how to buy the tickets, I think it's really important.
Yeah. And I feel like actually the whole website thing, I feel like it's a lot of people do ignore. I think even for us now, we still don't even go on websites anymore. We're just on social media. But if you are selling something, you are going onto the website eventually. And if the website doesn't look it's like your first impression. If it doesn't look good, then I may or may not want to go and fully go through with the purchase. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I do think, like you were saying,
it's a trust issue, right?
Yeah, trust, it is a trust issue. Because, so recently I had someone that asked me for some business advice, and the instant she gave me the website and I looked through the website, I was like, oh, there's just certain things where you're like, it's not visually enough for you to feel like, oh, this is professional and I'm going to pay to buy this.
So true.
There is something there. So UX design, I think, is the whole web design, the next thing for design. It's not just the web design. It's our instinct of where do we want to click? Do we even want to click? Kind of thing like that. Even the colors on your website, there is something there. And I do think a lot of people these days feel like you could make a business just out of Instagram, but I still think a website is still important. And I do think you should invest either your money or your time into making your website look decent. And I don't think it has to be like super professional, but I do think there has to be like instinctual. Yes, I want to purchase. Oh, there's like an event page. That means that this person does workshops or events or things like that. It has to be convenient, I think. Yeah. And I do have an event page specific to workshops. So that's why I think people do look for my class or like what's my next upcoming workshop or event that I have. So I do have it listed out. And I have a gallery full of my past events. I mentioned on my event page that I have private classes, that I offer private classes and giving all the scenarios. So I do get a lot of inquiries for workshops. And I think I would like to think it's probably because you could look through my event page and see that's what I offer. So yes, I definitely think you should make a gallery for your workshop, your events, things like so. Update your website. Yes, Jessie, that was, I feel like it's so important. I think if it, if it looks a little outdated, question like, are they online? Are they still available? Yes. I also have a link in bio. It's not really link in bio like through the app, but I have it linked there too. So if I have an upcoming workshop, it's listed out there no matter what. Yeah.
So important. Yeah.
SEO is still a thing.
It is.
Right? I mean, like just people looking for a Mother's Day event, right? We type in Mother's Day workshop in Google and a million things pop up.
Yeah.
And if your website's not there, it won't be found. Essentially, it's just you need to let people know what you're offering. And a website, I think, is much more reliable. It will be you can control. You don't have to deal with algorithms. You can control the SEO versus Instagram, which I think we all agree. Lately, it's just been I don't know, there's just less traffic, I feel like, less traffic. Less people are on it. People don't see things until 2 days later. Or I don't see your posts until 2 days later. So unreliable, I think, that you need to have a fallback where something you can control, something more reliable.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Oh, these are all such great tips.
I feel like some of our followers, though, may be just like Etsy stores. So I would say that's probably one of the reasons why you need a website outside of your Etsy products. So if you want to do a workshop and you have an Etsy store, I would say you should still have some type of website where it could announce your events and workshops, things like that. So I feel like you almost sometimes have to have a website designated for like your gallery, for your upcoming classes and things like that. And then maybe you could also have a sub link that takes you to your Etsy store for like your regular products. But I would say definitely look into making a website.
And also one tip I want to give everyone is Linktree. I know a lot of people have used Linktree in the past. I did myself, but I've moved away from it and actually have a link page on my website that I link to Instagram, all the social medias. I can update just one place instead of multiple places all over the board. And it makes me update my website too. And it brings more traffic. Why give your clicks away to someone else when you have it go back to your website? So think about that. If you have a website, it's so easy nowadays with all these templates, especially if you're on Squarespace, that you could do a link page that directs traffic to you. That's really where you want it to be.
I have a link page through my website too. And that way I could customize it. And that's like where I could direct people. I don't know how you direct people from Linktree. Say like they DM'd you. So you need a separate separate link. And it's like Linktree, whatever. I don't know.
When you do DM, you can do the direct link to your website. But if you're on a profile page, you know how they used to have the links? You'd only have one link available. Now you can have multiple links. So that one link, people would do link, and then that link tree would have all these little buttons that you can customize to link back to wherever you want it to be.
Yeah. I think it's cleaner when you could figure it out and do it just on your website.
Oh, yeah.
And that way they can also just go to your website, like your homepage.
Exactly. More clicks.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. I have heard that using the multiple links on Instagram is really good too. If let's say you don't want to do a link tree and you only or link to your links from your website and you only have, let's say, three links, doing it directly because now Instagram has those multiple links. That's pretty effective as well. But it depends. Aesthetically, it's not that great. And it's also hidden at sometimes, right? If you have too many things, you can't see all the links. But That's always an option, right?
Yeah.
You can update those ones too.
Exactly. Any other tips we want to share with our audience on how to market their workshop? I feel like we covered a good chunk of it.
It's so true. To be honest, Instagram provides you with so many ways to like market it as I'm telling people, right? You've got your notes, you've got your stories. If you've got more than 10,000 followers, the stories directly or links. Yeah, you've got your different. Yeah, exactly. There's so many ways. It's just that sometimes if there's not enough eyes on it, it doesn't really matter how loudly you try to shout,
Yes.
right? So that's a limitation about it. But we all still try to market on Instagram.
Yeah.
I think you have to, yeah.
You have to, yeah. Because there are some people who are only on Instagram.
Do find you.
So,
and maybe you can do some type of like poll when you're, I know the workshop that I do it at, the Orange County location that hosts me, they have a little section when you purchase the ticket to reserve the seat, like where did you find us? So whether it's on Yelp, was it through the workshop instructor or was it through the newsletter? Like it will have the little like category. And that way we can see where do we get our customers. And then maybe we could tally it up and concentrate on those places. If it was through the newsletter, then you could make sure that you're always using that as a priority, not forgetting. If it was through Instagram, then maybe you do have to concentrate more on Instagram. So I would say maybe you could even do a poll and see like where your customers are coming from. Once you've had a couple workshops in, you can see where did they find you and concentrate and prioritize where you found your customers. But yeah, I feel like you got to try it all. Like I'm on this thing all day. Like I'm on Instagram, I'm on TikTok, I'm on my website. I have to do my newsletters now. Like it is a lot, but I would honestly at one point, especially before the pandemic, like I was saying, when I did my workshops, that was a huge part of my income. It's really interesting because I actually got a random message from a follower saying, it seems like you don't make a lot of money off of workshops. And I don't know how she judged me on that, but I was like, no, I actually make a lot of money off of it. And now that I've done it for so long, I've accumulated all my supplies. So I don't really have a lot of supply cost in general. I actually don't have much supply cost, I feel. And it's not like I'm giving like crazy amounts of paper either. And paper, I get them when they're on like crazy deals. So I feel like this is such a good way to make income. And I feel like there's no like conflicting of interest between any of us because we all live in different places. Yes. Even if we lived in the same place, you'll have a different community. So I feel like people still come to my classes and it's still a great way. I don't turn it down even if, okay, maybe if I got 2 people to sign up, I might turn it down. But if I get a minimum of 5, I'll still go. So I think you should have a minimum. I think it should be still somewhat worth, going. But yeah, even if it's 2 and you're starting out, you should still make it happen and at least take some cute photos and start from in videos.
I mean, actually, Sarah, I think we're leading up to that question, but couldn't be asking about pricing, right? Because minimum means that you want to consider your pricing. How do you determine what your minimum is?
Yeah. No, my technical minimum is 10, but like I said, I would still go for 5. It depends on but usually, but I feel it's still, even the 5 people, typically they're people that I've never met before. And I feel like that could still lead into business in the future. I want to say 10 is my minimum, but I guess depends on the actual day.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. And also know your limitation on how many students you can actually teach. Is it up to 20 people?
Yeah,
is that enough for you to walk around? Because knowing your minimum to meet your costs, but also knowing how many people you can teach all at one time. Because you're going to have a variety of students. Some are quick learners, some are very slow. How do you juggle all these different needs all at the same time? And what is your experience like to be able to do that? Do you need to hire an assistant to help you if your class goes up to 30 people? Because 30 people, I have to admit, is a lot of people to walk around. At that point, I'm always have an assistant with me that can cover the grounds and help them with the basic things. And if they need something more, they just flag me and I just walk over and help them.
Yeah. The real talk is that I actually had a complaint on one of my full classes. I had a sold out class And I try to be very aware of how people are doing. But I guess that specific day, it was really busy and I had a full class. And they emailed back saying that however many days later, they emailed back saying it was too fast. And I was really upset. And it actually instantly got me upset for getting such a, like, I was defensive. But like when I looked back, I was like, I didn't want them to have a bad time. And I have all these excuses. But at the end, like, yeah, that person may or may never come back to any of my classes or buy any of my products. It is going to happen. You're going to get complaints, but I think you just live and you learn. Yeah.
What's the maximum or what's average and maximum that you normally teach?
Mine's 20, but I've done classes that were over 100. It's going to look different.
Yeah.
It's more like a demonstration, like rather than an actual class when it's more than 20, I would say. So that class that I got a complaint, it was 20 people. And it is still hard for me to walk around and make sure that I'm aware of where everybody is at. Because clearly I didn't know that person was upset.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. In all of my classes, there's some places that you don't get to determine. It just depends on how many people can fit in that store, right? The paper place, the maximum is 8. We've tried 10 before, but and then after COVID as well, it's kind of like, no, we don't want to be that close to each other. 8 the max. When we're determining the cost, it really does matter how much we're charging each participant, how much of it is going to cover the materials, how much of it is going to cover their paper place costs, right? They have to have a person there for 3 hours.
Exactly.
To clean up, to set up, to just stand there, right? And then how much are they going to pay me so that it's fair? And for me, I always have a minimum, but at the paper place, honestly, I started out there. They were the ones who gave me the opportunity. So I'm like, okay, it's fine. This is my minimum. But if we get more than minimum, then we're going to split the profit. And even then, it actually is less than what I get at the art center. So in Ontario, Canada, there is an association that has these rules in terms of what they recommend the pricing to be for art, for half day or full day, either workshop or talk or panel discussion. And then they also have a section on exhibit and stuff like that. But anyways, there is a specific one in teaching. And so there is a half day class. So anything that's between 0 hours to 5 hours, this is what you should be paid. And then any more is a certain amount. So I like to rely on that as a basis, a good standard, right? So everyone gets paid similar, at least a minimum amount. It's hard because the pricing might not, the suggestion does keep up with inflation, but the reality of venues is that maybe they don't have the funding or they're not able to meet that standard. But I think it's important to look into that in your area to see if there's any kind of regulations or artist guilds or artist organizations that have these formal or informal rules, because that's a really good starting point. At least you can say, especially with these nonprofit organizations that are run by government, you can say, this is what it says. So these are the regulations. So in Canada, I don't know why I keep forgetting the name. It's the Canadian Artists Representation, and then goes into French. Le Corps d'Artistes Canadiens. So CARFAC has these minimum recommended fee schedules that you can look at. And CARFAC is CARFAC.ca. And they're tools for visual artists if you have questions about what fees to charge for an exhibit or fees to charge when you're doing a workshop or when you're asked to do a talk or a panel discussion. And they're really good to refer to. I highly recommend that. But if you don't live in Canada, you can look for something similar. I'm pretty sure in New York, there's something similar as well. In a lot of the big cities, they will have these types of informal fee schedules. But that's how I start off with when I'm negotiating with art centers. And these are cultural centers. They're technically nonprofit funded by the government because they have certain rules that they have to abide by. And to be honest, a lot of times their fees are like, they'll ask you, they'll be like, what do you want your fee to be? Like,
yes, exactly.
I don't know, what does everyone else charge? But it's like a black hole. No one's going to tell you. They're not going to tell you, well, this artist is going to charge this, or this is the average rate, or this is the maximum rate. You need to go in there confident with a certain rate. And so if you can say, this is my minimum, and it's in reference to, in line with CARFAC rates, then you have something to go on. And they might say, oh yeah, we charge, but at least you've got something to work with.
Exactly.
And you feel a bit more confident because then they can adjust how much they charge the participants, right? To be honest, I don't know how they determine what they charge. I'm sure they have to do calculations in terms of how to cover lights, teachers' cost, material fees, overhead and whatnot. But I've seen the Aurora Cultural Center charge 1 year, like 70, and then in the fall 40. How can the numbers be so different? The same teacher, same amount of hours, just a different flower, but it has no impact on them. I don't know how they do it, but that's their problem. How they decide to charge. They have a bottom line, but I think you need to go in there also with a bottom line, right? And so the same thing with if you're doing it at a creative workshop where you might be sharing profit 50-50, or maybe you're renting, you need to make sure that you're charging enough that if you're saying, okay, my minimum is 4 people, that 4 people is going to pay for all of your overhead and your cost, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or something that you feel is fair, because my minimum is it depends on how much we charge the participant, and it depends on what we decide to charge the participant. That's essentially what it is. And then I'd be like, if it's only 2 people, does that pay for my 5 hours of prepping, of emails, of cutting everything on the materials? Does it cover all of that? For the one for the Mother's Day workshop, I was like, we charged 75 plus 20, so it was $95. So technically it was a little bit under $200 for 2 people. And that is not my goal, but I felt she's a follower. Like, she literally followed me and signed up and bringing her mother and no one else. She's not going to anyone else's Mother's Day event. And I felt, you know what? No, I'm willing to do this, because ultimately it's somebody I know. It's somebody who specifically looked me up to sign up for my workshop. It's somebody that I feel trusts me, and I feel very grateful to have follow me. And so in a way, like you, Sarah, I feel like thinking it is like the day. It's not that it was Mother's Day weekend for myself, which I probably won't do any Mother's Day event ever again. But still, I felt, you know what? I think it's worth it, because it's worth paying back on a personal note. I felt like it's worth paying back. It's worth marketing. She might later on sign up for another one, right? Yeah. Or bring other people to my private workshop. And having that opportunity to be that intimate with her and her mother, that's not something you often get at big workshops. Sometimes you want to have that connection with your 20 or whatever people, but you can't. So those opportunities where you feel like, you know what, it's fine. It's not what I normally get paid, but it's okay because I find value in another way. I think it's definitely fair to go. And imagine canceling on them. Like, I can just imagine if I was her. Yeah. I'd be like, oh, that would suck. And then you might lose that trust where it's like, well, I don't know if I want to sign up for a workshop for ever again, because what if they get canceled the next time? So it's those little things. I think that's why workshops, you're not just selling a product, you're selling yourself. You're selling, you're building a relationship with people in your community who not just buy your product, but it's another person. It's another human being who loves your work, wants to be part of it. And I think it's a two-way street. So my minimum usually does depend on the venue, because I don't have a say when it's the Royal Cultural Center. They have their own minimum. But if you're in a private venue, I think you can do the math and decide whether or not it's worth pursuing, especially if it's your first one too. Your first workshop, you might not want to cancel because building blocks, right? The first one, maybe it's small and instant. You're like, maybe I'm going to lose a little. I'm not going to get paid as well as I wish. But building upon that, I think, is really important, because ultimately it's also a learning experience for you, right? Like, how do you market, or how do you teach your people, right? So
my advice is also, you could do giveaways to your class if it is really small. Like, I've had classes where it was like the minimum of 5 people. Like, my minimum is 10, but I have 5 people. Then I would either give them away to my friends if the venue allows it, just to look a little bit more full, or just in general to take advantage of the time that you're going to go anyways. You can do even a giveaway with the venue and maybe give away a ticket or 2 and at least attract more people. And and those people could be your customers in the future. So I would say definitely still go for it. I know, like, you can't cancel on the 2 people. Like, I am totally with you on that. I feel like I would want to still do it. And sometimes it's easier to do a class that's small. So then it's worth it for me.
No, it is much easier. When there's a lot of people, you can't have the same connection. And like you said, like, when there is a lot of people, you only have to get complaints like me. You what? Or that's the thing, right? I have to have a maximum. My maximum is 16 people. And it usually is not 16. And for usually about 12 to 14. And even that, I'm okay. I really got to pay attention to what's going on and make sure I give everyone enough attention. And it can be so hard when people's skills are all different. All levels of skills. People are going to be some really fast. Some people are going to be really slow. And then got to find a middle ground. Those are really hard to manage, just like for you, but also like for them, right? Like them waiting around until you come around. I think it's personal in terms of what you feel capable of taking on, but it also could be a cost issue, right? It could be the venue is really expensive. You need to fill it with at least 15 people. Otherwise, you won't get your costs back. That's something to consider too, right? In terms of pricing. But I have to say, like with a venue, I don't control the pricing at all.
Yeah.
With the non-profit ones, with the profit ones, you do control the pricing. Yeah. And those fall more on us to determine what the cost is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is really great conversation. So to end this particular podcast, instead of asking what snacks that you like, I'm going to ask, what snacks do you like to bring for your students for these workshops? I will start first. So one thing that I've really considered is like to make sure that it's dairy-free, gluten-free, like all the allergies, something that's very neutral. Everyone can enjoy it. Hi-Chew is a really great treat. It's a sugar thing. I always want to boost people energy, and you always want to think, is it high in the sugar? Hi-Chew is not too high in sugar, but it's like a great, enjoyable snack. And I feel like it's easy to get. You can buy it at Costco. They come in a giant bag. They need to share it across multiple workshops. Comes in a lot of different flavors. And I feel like everyone always enjoy it. And the most important thing, it's clean to eat. So unlike chocolate, which melts in your hand, you have to be careful about getting that chocolate on your crepe paper. So it's something quick and easy. How about you guys? What do you guys like to bring as a little treat for your students?
For my workshops, I usually have the host or the place, the location that I do it at. They usually give out the treats, and it's their cost, which is really amazing for me. But they do cookies right now, and they'll do it at the end of the class, because by the time I finish my class, it's, I think, like noon. So they'll just have a treat and then go to their lunch, go on with their day. But my favorite snack that they used to do, they used to go to a bakery that's really popular in California called Porto's. And they do these like cheese rolls.
I love Porto's.
So good. And they used to give out cheese rolls. My host is amazing. I'll do a little shout out for them. Their store is called M. Lovewell, and they're out in downtown Santa Ana. And they used to serve Porto's. If the line is ridiculous to get anything there, and they have like multiple locations in California, and they're all busy. But they used to wait in line, go early in the morning, and get like a whole box of Porto's cheese, the bread that they have. Like they would do that all the time. But ever since the pandemic, they stopped doing it, and they do cookies so that they can take at the end. It's like you don't have to grab the bread and things like that. So they just made it a little cleaner. But the cookies are great too. But if you guys are in California, try Porto's.
Yes, Porto's is so good. Even their tres leche cakes are really good too.
Yeah.
Yum. How about you, Jessie?
Well, the only place that has ever served me was at a church, private workshop that I caught at a church, and they brought sushi burritos. I thought, ooh, that's really nice. Yeah, most of the art places, they don't have pardoning. Funding for snack. Yeah, I don't really. Lately, I've been bringing flour.
Oh, I love that.
As model. Yeah, so I've been teaching the tulips and roses. So I just bring a bunch and then have them distributed around the class. And it's nice for people to be able to see what they're making and it brings the freshness to it. I think that is nice rather than it being like, oh, this is just a class with no windows. So that I find usually does brighten people's day. But yeah, I don't really serve food otherwise. Also, I think with the nonprofits, I'm not quite sure what their rules are with food, because they're pretty strict here about, especially in schools and stuff, about what to bring, how much to bring. And then since COVID, I haven't really said that. And to be honest, they just don't have the funding. And then it's another thing to pack, which is to think about. Yeah. Wait, I'm like, oh, sorry, guys.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us on this fun episode. Hope you learned a lot. If you have any questions, always reach out to one of us. We'd be more than happy to answer any questions you might have. Or like Chi Chi had brought this particular question in. And so we're happy to have this really great discussion on how to help you even more. So tune up to our next episode. Thank you.